we live in a democracy. I believe in that process. I, as a member of the committee, was entitled to vote whatever way I wanted. I voted with my conscience. Surely be to God, nobody could deny me that right. I was consistent in my support of the amendments which were leaning in the way of which my views would have been. There is one person who seems to be left out of an awful lot of debates, be it in the houses of the Oireachtas and everywhere else, and that is God. And I don't mean to be preaching to anybody or anything like that, but I have a personal belief, it's just my own belief, that from the moment of conception to the moment of death, I believe there's one boss, there's one person in charge, and I believe that's God. I don't try to ram that down anybody else's throat. I'm not for 1 minute saying that, oh, I'm right and the other people are wrong. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is I'm standing true to what I believe myself. I remember one of the witnesses saying and repeating, please don't do what Canada has done. And just to be clear, in Canada, if you go into an A&E and if you're seeking assistance, you could have psychiatric problems, medical problems, whatever. One of the things you will be handed a leaflet on assisted dying, and it will be offered to you for all intents and purposes as a health care option. I don't agree with that because in my life, in my opinion, every life is worth living. Every life is a precious thing. It's a special thing. And we've seen that through the parents who have special children, for example, who are so important to them. And could you imagine if we robbed ourselves of that opportunity of having those beautiful people in this world? And nobody is perfect. Nobody has a monopoly on being right in this situation. All myself and Senator Ronan Mullen and Deputy Robert Troy are saying when it came to a vote, we voted differently to the rest of the committee, and we're entitled to do that. And we're putting out the other side. Wouldn't it be a very boring world if we were all the same? Where would we all be going if we were all the exact same? It would be like China or somewhere or North Korea, that we'd be afraid to open our mouths. Isn't it great that we can come out here and answer you? We are answerable to you and we're answerable to the public, and we have to be true to ourselves. And I think that's great. And I have no disrespect. And the people who might have been critical of me last night, I have nothing but admiration for them, for their expertise, their diligence. And I want to say this, and I want to say it very strongly. The members of that committee, they gave it 120%, every one of them, from all parties and none. And I was really overly impressed with the amount of thought and effort that they gave into it. And no one can take anything from them. And just because they voted in favour of these recommendations, my attitude about that is they're politicians, they're entitled to do that, as we are entitled to do what we are doing here today. We're offering a different side to this argument, to this debate. It's now up to the government, it's up to the houses of the Oireachtas. But what I don't want to see happening, I don't want to see this being shelved and that we won't debate it properly and thoroughly, because I think now that the process has started, what we should do is debate it and follow it through. I would hope that it won't be legislated for. I would hope that perhaps maybe more deputies and senators might have views like our own. I can only hope for that. And again, as has been said by Senator Ronan Mullen, everybody thought they knew a couple of weeks ago what the people of Ireland were saying, because we had all the major parties inside there and saying that, oh, well, everybody should vote yes. But what did everybody do? 73% voted no. So that showed the politicians weren't listening to the people of the ground. I would hope that we're listening to the people on the ground, and there are a lot of them who have concerns, and we're reflecting their concerns here today.
Even when we discuss whether assisted dying should be legal, what you're actually doing is contributing to a situation where some people may value their lives less in moments of vulnerability. You know, we can't really legislate to take away a human right, and the Constitution does have a strong commitment for the state to vindicate life. So what I would like to see happen now is that there would be an important public conversation. If there is a criticism I would make of those who sought to question Michael's right to express his views, I think that's part of the politics we're seeing in recent times. We talk a bit about cancel culture these days, the idea that if you're in the minority you should kind of go behind a rock. Now, in fairness, I think the people making those criticisms realise that that was not the way to go. We didn't hear any more of that today. But I think what's important now is that the politicians actually listen to the people and that we have a deep discussion in society about where we are going and whether we are making people feel vulnerable even by suggesting that there's a category of people whose lives it's okay to end with the willingness of the state. Just one thing Michael said about people of faith, I've nothing against God either myself, but it is worth noting that at the committee we heard the voices of people of all faiths and none, and indeed humanist voices who were deeply concerned about any form of euthanasia or assisted suicide because they think it undermines people's welfare, and that can unite people of all faiths and none. And finally, I would like to say that we're not just proposing no legislation here. We are making a lot of positive proposals about what should be emphasised. Studies into ableism in our society. Because the way we see people with disabilities, the way we see older people, the way we see people who suffer from chronic or terminal illness, all needs to be questioned. Studies into depression, because the mental health interconnection with this. The palliative care people talk about when people get a cancer diagnosis, the higher rate of depression, the higher desire for suicide, but that changes when the supports are put in place. Much more resources for palliative care, research into coercion and how it happens. Not just the type that the committee says we're going to make illegal, but the more subtle form of social coercion. We know that 1 in 6 older people in our society are affected by elder abuse. We have to look at this question through that lens as well, because that's the risk we're running if we make it okay. And finally, I would really get back to this should not be in any way linked with the medical profession. Despite the healthcare experts saying we don't want anything to do with this, what is proposed in this majority report is that this would be paid for by the taxpayer and connected in with the HSE. And there were attempts made by the minority to say, if you have to do this and you shouldn't, you should at least involve, for example, solicitors with the request to try and keep doctors away from the process because it affects the doctor-patient relationship. Those recommendations were largely ignored. And that's why I have to say, giving my own opinion, I feel that the committee got reckless once it had rushed to the initial decision to recommend legislation for assisted dying. And that's my personal optic on it.